Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll call this meeting to order. It is February 26th, and this is the meeting of the Assembly Ethics and Elections Committee. And I don't believe we actually do a roll call. So we'll just chime in on who's here. So Mr. Dunbar.
Forrest Dunbar.
Pete Peterson.
Crystal Kennedy.
Liz Edwards. Barbara Jones.
And that was Barbara Jones in the background there. So, okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about whether or not we have any legislative priorities at this point that this committee wants to deal with. And Ms. Jones, did you have any suggestions on that?
I think the committee has talked about 2 legislative priorities over the last couple of years. And I think the most important one is asking the legislature to change state law so that a stamp is, quote, not a thing of value.
Right.
I think that is my understanding of what the committee wants, that you want nonprofits, churches, community members to be able to give stamps to people to return their ballots by mail. And that is a state law problem, according to Assembly Council.
That's a great point.
So, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so we have to decide whether we want to restrict the campaigns from providing stamps. You know, I mean, if we're going to allow, you know, nonprofits or whatever types of 401 sub 3, whatever their designation is, the ability to provide stamps, you know, then you know, campaigns are probably going to think that they need to provide stamps as well, and so, you know, we have to decide whether we think that's a good idea or not.
I think it's fine. It's always been standard practice in Alaska that you can drive someone to the polls.
Right.
A campaign can drive somebody to the polls.
That's correct.
And this is, honestly, you spend more on gas than you would on a 50-cent stamp. So I don't have a problem with that at all. So I just don't. And I think if you make it clean to say a stamp is not a thing of value, then it's anyone. Anyone can provide a stamp to anyone else because it's just not a thing of value. The same way that driving someone somewhere is not a thing of value.
So, Ms. Jones, you mentioned that it's a state, something that the state would have to change. So what would really be the mechanism there? Is that a legislative thing? Is something the courts would have to actually make a statement on? Can APOC board do it?
Actually, I probably don't know all of the answers to those questions. I do know that Dean Gates brought an opinion to this committee several years ago when you made a decision our first years to say, we're going to tell them it's okay. And Dean said, hold the presses. And he gave you the opinion. And my understanding was the opinion was both a case and the legislature changed the law. So I think that I need to bring that back to you so that you can look at that. And then I think what you need to do, and it looks like the current assembly is doing quite a few resolutions that say, State of Alaska, pay attention to us and take action. So you could do that. You could do a resolution for the whole assembly to vote on. Or you could just add it to this legislative priority list. And then my understanding of what the clerk's office is doing is keeping track of those. And then when the legislative committee meets, that the legislative committee would add it to the priorities. Interestingly, like, I'm going to use Starner Bridge as an example. Ms. Kennedy did a resolution regarding Starner Bridge. The assembly passed it. So now that is automatically going to be part of the legislative package next year.
Wow.
We're keeping track of all of those resolutions and adding them. It's taken us a while to figure that out, but we realize that, you know, you do all this work and then we're not telling the legislature about it again. So you could do either or both.
Okay, well, I guess I'm still a little bit hung up on what you said, though, about there's been a legal opinion about this already, and there is a state change, or we have to make a state law change?
The state of Alaska would have to make a change.
Okay.
So I think you need to look at this some more. If this is something that you're interested in, we'll bring back that opinion, and you can take a look at the opinion, and then you can make a decision which direction the committee wants to go.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
So Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I actually had two different legislators tell me when I was in Juneau last week that they actually appreciate the Assembly passing these resolutions, taking a position on some of these legislative bills. And that can be something that the sponsor of those bills can provide to the rest of the committee members when they're testifying, when their bill's up in front of committees. And I know Mr. Wellerton has a little heartburn about that occasionally, depending on the resolution. But, if we at least, if they know where we are on a certain piece of legislation, it might help, or at least might get the word out a little bit.
Okay. So I'm not on the legislative committee, so maybe if either of you two are, you could kind of fill me in on how you would like to have this come to you. I mean, do you want us to draft some kind of a resolution, a basic resolution out of this committee that goes to legislative, or would you rather we just presented the thought, the idea, and then let legislative handle it in terms of putting it in more into a legislative priority? So,
I guess I'm supposed to be chairing that committee, but I don't know if I'm supposed to be chairing it while I'm running for re-election. So,
well, typically, what have you done in the past with things like that?
We have supported legislation with resolutions in the past, depending on what it is and whether we thought there was even an outside chance that it might pass in Juneau. If it was a bill that we thought was going nowhere, was going to get no hearings at all, then it doesn't really do a whole lot of good for us to weigh in on it. But if it's a bill that's moving, or that we realize that it's scheduled for hearing or whatever, then maybe our opinion might help or might hurt, depending on what the bill is and which committee it's in.
Well, my understanding, and Ms. Jones, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but is that we're kind of bringing forward this idea ourselves. This isn't something that somebody in the state legislature is tracking at this point. We would basically be bringing it to their attention. So we would be encouraging them to start at square one with putting this kind of legislative change through.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so typically, bills in the House and the Senate are introduced in the State Affairs Committee that deal with elections. And so someone who had a seat on that committee in either the Senate or the House would be, if you had a representative in your district that was on that committee, you could approach them about maybe introducing legislation like that. And as a matter of fact, they actually had a hearing about, and I don't know, this might be our second priority, is permanent absentee voting. And that bill actually already had a hearing in this session. And so that bill might actually be moving.
Okay. Well, if the committee is agreeable, it just looks to me like at this point we can come up with a statement of sorts, and we'll put that on the agenda for the next meeting. And if we want to make sure we're crafting it and so that we're saying exactly what we want it to say, and then we'll just send the concept, if you will, to the legislative committee. Fair enough? Does that sound reasonable?
Or, I don't know if we need to delay it a month. I think we could start working on, it's just a resolution. We could start working on a resolution, relatively soon and try to, because if you wait to pass it until late in March or early April, once they get down to the last 3 weeks of the legislature, it's absolutely bedlam down there.
Yeah.
And sometimes many of the committees quit meeting other than the Finance Committee.
I mean, I doubt it, the law change is going to get passed this session. I mean,
Right.
It hasn't been introduced. So I think we could either pass a resolution, this in the coming months, just out of the, we don't even need to go to the legislative committee. We could just pass it from the full body.
Right.
Or we could do what you just described and have it added to our overall legislative program next year. You know, just like a paragraph. Then we wouldn't need a resolution. We need a paragraph just describing what we want. Either way is fine.
Or both.
Or both. Yeah,
Yeah,
actually,
sure.
that's
So,
both.
But I agree with you. These are long-term plans. This is not a short-term idea. I think this is a long-term, longer-term issue for you. And obviously, you know, I want you to think about it and review the materials and make a decision that you're comfortable with, and then we'll go forward from there.
Okay,
So I'll put that on the agenda for next meeting.
thank you. Thank you. And Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I actually did run into I believe it was someone who's in the clerk's office in Kenai, and they have switched to pretty much entirely vote by mail themselves. And she was saying it actually took a little more work for the people in the clerk's office than previously, because they didn't have the poll workers doing the counting and everything. But she thought in the long run that it's probably, and she said they did get more voter turnout, and so she thinks they're probably going to keep doing vote by mail.
Okay, thank you. So anything else on that particular item? I don't think so, but I know Ms. Jones has the other potential legislative priorities.
So Mr. Peterson is correct. The second item is the permanent voter absentee list. So the Liz and Jean Sauget, who you see over there, have been working in the last month or so. We have had 200 voters that have requested their ballot at a temporary address. They're snowbirds. And so we would like those people to be able to have a permanent absentee address, if you call it absentee. If that would happen, those voters would always get their ballot at that address instead of having to ask every year. And then, in addition to that, what could happen is, I am not a snowbird, but I could request the state to have my ballot permanently mailed to my mailing address. So I could be on the permanent absentee by mail list. And we think that that is really good for the state. We think that is good for voters. They would be voting the same way in the municipal and then the state elections. So we would like to, it's a voter option, and we think that options are good for voters, and I think you've discussed this before, and we think that would be something that the committee should consider supporting.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For what the situation is now, there is actually already permanent absentee voting registration, but they have to have a reason. And so there's a list of reasons that are allowed. And so if you do away with the list of reasons, and so anyone who wants to can apply, then I think that actually opens it up and makes it simpler and more easy for people to do it, to vote if they happen to be snowbirds or whatever. And plus, we don't have to try to work administratively to send them ballots or send them applications for absentee to vote absentee every election. So it reduces the amount of time that the clerk's office would have to spend on that particular item.
That's true. So, question that you might know, Ms. Jones, too, is the current legislation actually looking at, they call it permanent, but isn't there like a 5-year maximum or something? Wasn't there a year, number of years?
I don't know
Okay.
the answers to that. Again, if you would like to put that on your list, this is a new category that we've added to your agenda. We will bring that all back before you. We'll get the bill that Mr. Peterson referenced regarding permanent absentee, and we'll bring a legal opinion back on the stamp. We'll get it all for you and put it on the agenda for your next meeting.
Okay, sounds good. Any objection to that? Okay. All right, then, anything else under legislative priorities? Oh, you've got it.
One more.
Okay.
So, we have just recently heard, I do not have any information about it, but there was an amendment to something before the legislature. I got a phone call from a legislative aide for Matt Clayman, and I also got an email from the clerks group asking what our opinion of it was. And it's an amendment that requires all local jurisdictions, all municipalities, to have their elections in October.
Right.
Have,
Okay.
have you heard of this?
A little bit, getting
Yeah.
wind of some of it, yes.
So,
Okay, thank you.
right now, that is all I know. I do not know how it would apply to home rule municipalities. But I think you need to be aware of it, and I think I need to bring that legislation to you. I will go ahead and forward you the information. I'll look it up and find it and get it to you. I don't have it, but I've heard about it.
Yeah.
Interesting. What's the justification? I mean, I could see why you'd have increased turnout if you were in November, but why would October have more turnout than April?
I don't know the answer to that. I've seen one response from one clerk who said, there is no way my assembly would do that. And I think she's like from Valdez, and she says, there is no way my assembly would agree to that or support that. I don't know enough about it. I just have to get the information.
How would that work? How would that work in Anchorage mayor's race when you have a runoff? Would the runoff take place at the same time as the November election?
It'd be pretty close.
That'd be crazy. Well, good thing we're on vote by mail, not the same machines the state is using. I wonder if any other cities have the same issue.
That may have been why the clerk in Valdez was so opposed to it.
Yeah.
Because they borrow the state equipment.
Yeah.
Well, can you get us a copy of that particular legislation and where it's at, and maybe some of the commentary?
bet.
Thank you. That would
Yeah,
be great.
and I'll just email that to you
Okay.
separately, but we won't wait for the next meeting.
I'll tell you
Okay,
what.
thank you.
The Anchorage municipality has much higher turnout in April than Fairbanks did in October. I mean, because we do vote by mail. I mean, our turnout is now higher than other cities that are voting in October. Yeah. Anyway.
Actually, you know the Matsu, they voted last year and they moved the Matsu election to November.
At the
So-
same time, yeah.
And did you know what? Their turnout was worse.
Oh,
Worse
interesting.
than their regular turnout so it was very, very poor turnout for
Yeah.
them.
Very
So-
interesting.
Because it's in off years. It's not.
That's
So
true,
it would have
too.
been in 2019 versus 2020. So they didn't get any benefit of like the regular state or federal elections happening at the same time.
Right. So I have talked to the
Maybe this
clerks
year
in the valley, and so remember, I think what all of us would really like and what would work
Yeah.
if we had a concurrent election
Yeah.
on November 4th. But that is not what that legislation is. It means that you have two elections on the same day. And at first, we've talked with the state about it, and the state, when we talked about it, made it perfectly clear that if somebody walks into a polling location, they go through the state line, get their ballot, get to vote their ballot, and then they can come to the Muni line and get their ballot and vote their ballot. And so it's separate workers, separate equipment, separate ballot boxes. And the problem is there are not enough election workers to do that.
Probably true.
That's one of the biggest problems. The other problem is, I think we all know that you go through that line, there is no way I'm going to wait in line for this line. So that is one of the concerns. However, what happened in Matsu was the election workers want to work for the borough and the Palmer and Wasilla and Houston. They feel loyalty to their community, not to the state. And because they work for the borough every year, because we have our elections every year, where the state is every other year. So the state now is working together. They're willing to work together. And so I think it's going to work out better where you'll go through one line, you'll get that ballot and then the other ballot, so that I think it's going to turn out better than the worst case scenario. But I think there are some policy considerations besides the practical considerations that are really your issues and not ours. So,
Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This might be an attempt to undo our vote by mail system here in Anchorage, because if we're doing vote by mail and they're doing vote in person on the same day, that would be totally different here than pretty much every other jurisdiction around the state.
Interesting. Yeah, Mr. Dunbar.
But the legislation is to move to October, not November. Is that right?
you know, I thought it was October. I could be mistaken. I think it's October. I don't know the answer to that.
The simplest solution to all of this is for the state to go to vote by mail. That sort of solves everybody's problems. But
Well, let's wait and see what kind of information we get to see what this is really all about, and then we'll decide if we're going to comment or how we'll proceed with that in terms of legislative priorities. So, okay, so budget items for unless there's any other legislative priorities that either of you wanted to bring up. Okay, so budget items for 2021. And I don't know if we have anything specific on that either, but that could be one for Ms. Jones to let us know about if there's anything that we need to.
If I could ask a question to
Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is the ballot short enough we can keep it all on one page? That's my biggest question.
No, Mr. Chair, the ballot is 4 pages. It is not just 3 pages, it is 4. So that is a challenge that we are working on. And so yes, the cost will increase because we're printing twice as much paper. The postage is more to mail the packages out.
yeah.
And I think we can talk about this, but our voters are going to have to pay more to return it.
They can't do it. One stamp won't do it.
We were at one stamp with one card. It's 70 cents.
That's a problem. We're going to get a lot of one stamp on there on our way back.
And we'll that's okay. We'll work with the post office and make sure that we get those ballots.
Yeah.
But it's going to be some voter education. I think the best news that I have about the 2-card ballot and the increase in postage is, remember last year we flopped. First year we had mostly returned by mail, this many by Dropbox. Last year it was just the opposite.
Yep.
Far more. So very fewer were returned by mail. So if that trend continues, we should be okay.
Okay, good.
And so we should actually try to encourage people to put it in the Dropbox so they don't have to pay that 70 cents for the postage.
And we have more Dropbox opportunities for them as well. Right?
We do. So did you see our giant new Dropboxes?
Oh, wow.
So, Ms. Kennedy, you'll be happy to know one of them will be at Eagle River.
Really? Is there room? Because you realize they have a library Dropbox in the same spot now.
We have talked to the Parks and Recs people, and they know the measurements.
Okay.
So,
It's like a shredder.
and then the other one will go at the Lusac Library. The Lusac was the biggest problem. We needed to empty it twice a day. It was overflowing. So even the small one. So this will be better.
Okay. Good.
We
Thank
talked
you.
about, may I?
Yes.
We
Mr.
talked
Dunbar.
about painting them or in some other ways, making them a little more visible against the snow? These are-
Yeah, so one of the things that we've looked at, Mr. Dunbar, is, do you know when you see those cars that have that wrap on them?
Yeah, vinyl
That's
wrap.
what we're looking at. But
Right.
I'm not sure that we'll have it done this time, but we will keep looking at that, getting a wrap on them so that they're not white against the white snow. We also have the flags and some
Yeah.
other things that we've done to make them more visible.
And
Mr. Peterson?
thank you, Madam Chair. And I've seen this somewhere, and I don't know, I don't think it was on ballot drop boxes, but it was election related, where people had put balloons on something to sort of remind people, or, you know, that it was getting closer to the election or something. And so, they're fairly inexpensive as well.
Yeah. Well, that kind of reminds me, though, of a question. So what kind of restrictions, because those are municipal property and they have to do with elections, what kind of restrictions do we have on putting anything on them? Stickers or
Well, if
wrap or
if,
painting them?
we can do a little field trip if you want. Now, those ones don't have anything on them yet, but the other drop boxes do have a sign on them that says tampering with a drop box is an election offense. So I believe that was a change that you made in those, in the changes to Title 28. It was just a routine change, but it is an election offense to tamper with a drop box, either to paint them or to do anything. And if you remember, we selected the locations for the drop boxes. There were 3 criteria. One is government property, well lit, and some cameras on them, and then we want them accessible by street and by so you can pull up. We want the driver to be able to pull up and drop them in, and then the other side is accessible by sidewalks so that walkers can do them. So those were our criteria. So I think we're okay on the tampering. We're okay. We also have an agreement with APD. APD has the locations of the drop boxes, and their officers park at the drop boxes to do their reports every night. So we have an APD presence.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking in terms of defacing them, you know, would that
Yes.
be, if we decide to paint them or put stickers or something like that on them, are we actually defacing them because they're election boxes? And they do have code against basically doing any of that.
Well, not us.
Okay.
So we can do anything we
Okay.
want on the boxes, however we want to advertise. And if we'll go back and look at the stickers that we have, and we'll put stickers on the new ones to
Okay.
identify
Okay.
them. But one of the things we also talked about, because they just blend in with the snow, was maybe doing a gold wrap.
Maybe we need to have a painting contest similar to our city seal
There
contest.
you go. Boy, some of those artists are amazing.
Well, and I just say that because there is a dumpster painting contest at Bear Paw every year, and that Alaska Waste donates, I think 5 or 6, and artists literally sit there during Bear Paw and paint them, and they're fabulous. You know, they're these beautiful murals. So we could probably have a lot of really talented people out there to make them really, really stand out and be beautiful. But anyway, I guess we can maybe talk about that later. But okay, so any other potential budget items?
No other budget items. I do think that we're going to come back to you with a request sometime during 2020. You know, we're going to need an increase for printing and postage, but I think that you understand that is explainable.
Okay. All right. Anything else from the committee then on potential budget items for 2021? Okay, not seeing any. So, the drafting work group.
So, Ms. Kennedy, before we go to that one,
Okay.
we forgot to put on the agenda just a general election update. So could I do the general election update for you now?
I think we would be.
Move to change the agenda to add a general election update by Ms. Jones.
Thank you.
Is there any
So-
objection? Hearing
Second.
none. Thank
So,
you.
we'll just go ahead and start with, we'll start with the calendar. And we are progressing through the calendar. We're about halfway through. You can see we've had the notice of vacancies, filing for office has closed, you've finished action on the props, the notice of election is published. We're at March 8th is our next date, and that's the last date to register for the election. The things that happen after that, as you can see, most important date, ballot packages are mailed on March 17th. You can see we have a few election workers here, and we'll have more starting, and we'll be up to full speed by March 30th is when almost everyone will have started, because as you can see, on March 30th, the Accessible Vote Center is open. We have the 6 accessible vote centers: City Hall, Eagle River, the Election Center, Lusac Library, Muldoon Mall, which was a new one last year. We've extended the hours there, and then O'Malley's on the Green.
And if, do you have a minute for a question then, Mr. Dunbar?
Absolutely.
Ms. Jones, how did the Muldoon Center work out? Did we get many clients or voters?
We didn't have a lot of voters. We've extended the hours, but not much. I think we probably need to have a pretty serious discussion. Muldoon, and I think Eagle River is another one, where the workers are suggesting to us that they need to work later in the evening. So we closed Muldoon last year at 6 on
Yeah.
Election Day. It's open till 8 this year, so it's open. But we were testing it. We weren't certain we had enough workers. We're good to go there. I have another show and tell. You can see that red cage in the back through the cage. That red cage is going to go, it's going to hold the election materials, and we've got a secure location. The state of Alaska is lending us some space, so we don't have to bring everything back every night. So you can see that was a concern last year when we had to bring every single ballot back. We have secure storage at Eagle River. It's our building. We have secure storage at the library. We have secure storage at City Hall. Even O'Malley's is ours. So we have secure storage there. So this is a plus at Muldoon. However, we are not staying open in the evenings. And again, not at Eagle River either. And I think next year we may want to shift that. We open at 8 till 5. Maybe we want to shift that to 10 to 7 or 10 to 6. But those are some things that you can let us know what your constituents think about that.
Okay.
So then of course we have the election day, and then the public session of Canvas, and of course you'll certify on April 21st. We have begun some initial discussions, and we've checked with our team, and we've also checked with the mayor's office, because we are partners with the mayor's office, and we are going to repeat Election Central at the Election Center. It saves us money because we pay to have Election Central at the Denina. So we're eliminating that cost. There's only one report because of vote by mail. There's one set of results. It's not a series of results. So everyone is here anyway. So it's cheaper for us to have IT in one location instead of 2. So that will start at about 8:30 on election night. After the polls close, then we'll have a celebration here. That is, I think, a general update. As for a couple of specific updates that I'd like to share with you, you know that we've got all of our candidate filings. We did have a candidate withdrawal after the fact, which was interesting. And so I've been working with Muni Legal, Dee Ennis and Dean about that, and so we have a plan going forward for that. The ballot review, we've seen the first draft of the ballot review from the League of Women Voters. I've sent that to all the lawyers, OMB, municipal manager, and I don't care who they send it to, but they have to get their edits back to me today.
Treasury? About the bonds?
OMB handles
Oh,
the
okay,
bonds.
okay.
And so then that information should be back today, and then they'll be ready to publish. We have all of the propositions are out. As you can see, the notice of election is done. The drop boxes and the accessible vote centers, we've talked a little bit about those. We have talked a lot about email voting, and we don't need to talk about that anymore. But we are continuing to offer email voting to voters, although we have lots of warnings. There's the email voting application is at front with a letter that says you are on notice. We are working on updating the frequently asked questions on the webpage, which is going well. And then we're working with Bill Falsey. He is quite a guy, as you all know, and he's offered us an intern. So we are updating the elections results page, and we have gone back to 1975, and we are making sure that we have the summary of results, the statement of votes cast, and the ballot propositions. And he's done research over the years, and all of the info isn't in the same place. So we're scanning it out of the drawers, and then we're saving it on the website. So it's going to be a great exercise when we get that done. So we're pretty proud of that. The last thing I want to just tell you about is our outreach and education efforts. And I have a lovely little update here from the amazing Anna Campione, who is unfortunately only working a couple of hours for us. And so Anna is just telling you what we've done. We're changing the concept from vote by mail to vote at home. That's been a really good move. I think that there is a new Vote at Home Association in the U.S., and that is what people are calling it. We're mailing the ballots, but most people do not return the ballots by mail. That's why those terms are not used as much. The address verification postcards went out early. We sent them out in November. Last year they didn't go out until last 2 years, January 1st. It was too late for the state to update the voter registration database, so we didn't collect all those undeliverables. This year the state, we did it early, so I expect there's probably 20,000 undeliverable postcards that have been updated in the voter registration database, so we're saving lots of money, probably like $2.50 times 20,000. So we only mailed 214,000 ballot packages instead of 235,000. So that's 20,000. So that's some good news. In addition, the state created the the new code, the new status code called LU, which you put into the code that we don't have to mail to. So LU is a voter who hasn't voted and whose mail was undeliverable, but we got a forwarding address. So so what was happening before is undeliverable, hasn't voted, and then we'd get a forwarding address, and then they were no longer in undeliverable, and we'd mail it, and it was still undeliverable. So we were just moving people from one to the other, and they always ended up undeliverable. So we've got the new forwarding address, the state is contacting them, but they're still undeliverable. So we don't have to mail to those voters. There's only 1,000 or so, but they haven't voted, they've been undeliverable for years. Somehow or other in our postcard return, we got a forwarding address, and so they're just putting them in a pending category. So if the voter contacts them, then they're going to get moved. Voter doesn't contact them, they stay put. So that will be good for us too. Anna's talking about our press releases, social media. In the social media section, and we should talk about this, we're working on a campaign to address the two important issues. It's a 2-card ballot. There's still just one ballot, but the ballot is 2 cards, card A and card B. Card A has card A with a little green highlighting. Card B has card B with a little red highlighting. And so we need to make sure that voters understand they have 4 pages to vote, front, back, front, back. So that's important for our voters. We want our voters to vote. Then the next part that is problematic for us, if my husband and I both vote and we just want to vote for assembly and we put card A and card A in one envelope, it's an invalid package. Those ballots will not count because we don't know whose card A is whose.
Right.
We know it's my envelope.
And you have to sign too, right?
Right. But even though I signed that envelope, which card A inside is mine and which is somebody else's. So
Right, yeah.
it's a no count.
And you don't have the second signature. Chances are
Exactly.
you don't have the second
And
signature.
so we don't count, we don't call those voters, or
Oh
we do?
yeah, we send them their letter within 3 days that it's not a valid vote. But I'm just telling you that we anticipate an increase in those types of problems. So if it's 2 card Bs, if someone decides that they don't care about assembly, but they do care about the alcohol tax or marijuana, and they just vote card B, same issue. So we're going to be prepared, and that's why Anna's talking about this campaign. The other part of it is people might do that to save money. They don't
Right,
want
the
to.
extra stamp.
Right. So we're going to do as much education as we can to figure out how to educate voters about that.
Okay, so Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So would it be possible to get Anna or somebody from the clerk's office to get some time on some of these talk radio shows to try to educate people who listen to those shows, at least, so maybe that would start to help to get the word out? Is that possible?
Well, Mr. Peterson, I do not think so. I think that typically, when we had Carolyn and Anna here, we had both of them full-time the year before last. And then we had enough people doing the work that I could appear or Carolyn could appear. We just don't have that staff now.
Right.
I am too busy working on election matters to be able to even plan a campaign to get out and do that. We'll do press releases, we'll let all of our partners know, we'll let the League of Women Voters know. It's in the ballot review. We'll let the Federation of Community Councils, but we just do not have the ability to be on talk radio.
Okay. However, we do as assembly members, so we can certainly do that. But I was wondering if you couldn't get some kind of a points sheet to basically send to the assembly members while we're doing the community council meetings.
Yep.
Because those typically will start up next week, the first week of the month, and that's going to be right before the ballots actually
Yep.
hit homes. So it would be a good idea wherever we happen to get out into the community to be able to make people aware of these nuances, these little
Absolutely.
potential challenges to the ballots. So,
That would be very helpful for us.
okay, just give us a little cheat sheet,
Okay.
and thank you.
We have a slightly new logo that has a little house on it that says, vote at home. These are going to be on the website. Obviously, the ballot review will be out. The GIS maps have been updated with the drop boxes, the accessible vote centers, and Liz has done all of the sample ballots. So if you go to the sample ballot map on the GIS, you can double click on you put in your address, double click, and it's going to pop up with card A and card B. That was a little bit of a challenge to make sure that we got both cards out there, but we did it. It's not live yet, right? And then we do have some routine radio ads, and we just did radio this year. We didn't do TV, but the radio ads, we had to buy that media a long time ago. It doesn't say 2 cards, and it doesn't say 70 cents because we didn't have that information when we placed the ads. So that is my election update.
Great, thank you, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we've already produced the radio ads for that? I mean,
Yes.
it's too late to change the script?
Yes.
Shucks.
So, I guess I'd kind of like to comment. I mean, I know you've already started to create this different concept of the idea of having, rather than the vote by mail, to the vote at home, and I'm hoping that doesn't make it even more confusing. One of the things that when you said vote at home, to me that sounds like getting out my computer and sending everything in electronically. But the point is you still have to either go to a drop box or mail your ballot.
Correct.
So the other thing is, as other communities start to do vote by mail and the state starts to do vote by mail, I think the terminology is going to stick to vote by mail. So I'm hoping that doesn't actually confuse people in the municipality.
The state is not using vote by mail. The state is using the term universal ballot delivery.
And now I have not heard that one.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Universal ballot delivery is by mail, but you can vote any way you want. And that is one of the things that we're trying to do, is tell voters you have lots of options to vote. You can vote electronically, which we'll see.
We'll talk about that.
Yes. You can vote at a vote center.
Mm-hmm.
You can vote at home, and you can return your ballot by mail or return it to a vote center, or you can return it in a drop box. So the idea is that voters have options. And everyone is doing it different. The one reason we were looking at this is because of the National Vote at Home Association. That is the direction that people are moving. I'll double check with Kenai. I think Kenai and Palmer are probably the 2 strongest movers, and I'll double check with them and see what their terminology is so that we have something consistent.
Well, and
This
just
year, everything is the same. Everywhere it says vote by mail, it says vote by mail and vote at home. We're not eliminating it. We're saying vote by mail or vote at home. We're trying to keep them both words.
Okay. But that is kind of interesting, though, because really what you're saying is we have options on how to vote. because you can also, you may not vote by mail, you may not vote at home, you can actually go vote at the voting center. So
Exactly.
you really, it's not necessarily
right.
vote at home either.
Right.
So I'm trying to figure out, okay, maybe there's actually an altogether different and more inclusive word that gets to all those different ways.
Vote your way.
Voting your
That's a
way.
good one.
Do it your way.
Yeah,
I
you know,
could hear,
I mean, because that's
Voter King.
you know, where's
Your way.
Frank Sinatra when you need him, you know?
Okay.
You guys are probably too young to remember that song. But
Yes, please keep giving us feedback on that. We really appreciate it. And the idea of getting a cheat sheet to the assembly members to take
Yes,
to the
definitely
community
do that.
councils, we love that.
Yes, definitely need that. So
And
Mr. Chief-
see, the ballots will be out on the 18th, and 99% of the community councils will have met by the
Okay.
19th, I think is the third Thursday.
Yeah.
So,
Madam Chair, I have to
Yes,
go
Mr. Dunbar.
can we push through the remaining items?
Yeah, and we
That's
started
Mr.
late, so do we
Dunbar's.
want to,
I move to extend the meeting by 10 minutes.
thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Is there any objection?
no,
Oh, sorry. There's, okay.
Right.
All right, so,
I got one for you right here.
oh, sorry.
So unfortunately, can we discuss this item, Madam Chair?
I think you wanted to talk, go ahead and get started on the service area
business.
boundaries, old business, yeah.
Report from
Yeah.
the draft working committee on charter changes. So this is the draft. I was reviewing it again this morning. Unfortunately, Dean's not here. I want to talk to Dean and Barbara about. I'm actually one of these things. I think I actually might want to take out unless they have a powerful reason not to do it. And that is the change to section 302A. If only because it makes it sound like we are gaining new powers. I think it's just a clarification. But Barbara, if you have that in front of you, the assembly shall establish the number of signatures on a petition required to submit the measure to the voters. Because below it says a petition for initiative or referendum shall be signed by a number of qualified voters equal to at least 10% of the voters. So it's already established what the level is. Can you remind me why we put that extra language in
I
there?
don't remember why we put that in there.
I think that language will be problematic for the voters. So I need to talk to Dean more about it. But the rest of it you can see is just about extending deadlines, basically. Because if you remember when we appointed, and I guess you
Austin.
were you on the body when we appointed Austin? Or she came, okay, that was right
No.
before you were elected. It was just extremely tight. It's just not enough time to run a whole vote by mail election. And there are a variety of other challenges in here too you can see. But it does require a charter change. We had talked about putting it on this ballot. This ballot's already long and complicated enough and already has a voting thing on there with the dual-member district. So this is something that myself and I think Ms. Quinn Davidson will probably put forward in the coming months, and that it has to go be voted on by the people. Basically, it makes it so you have a little more time in which to appoint somebody to the interim vacancy, and you have more time to run the election before the vacancy is filled, before the interim member is replaced by the full-term member. Because again, with both, especially with Austin, to a lesser extent with Eamon Dubosky, it just creates a lot of issues when somebody resigns, frankly, or for some other reason leaves the body. It's just not the time.
Okay.
That's
So
it.
we'll have more time to talk about this.
Oh yeah, it's a
and
charter change.
It's
so
not a rush.
No,
so-
what'll happen is it'll get introduced. I think what'll happen is it'll be introduced sometime in the summer, or like maybe May, and then it'll be discussed. I would imagine at this body, but also I'm sure a work session. It's a charter change, and then we'll have a debate on the floor, and then it'll potentially go to the voters. But it needs 8 votes to make it to the ballot. So
Okay, great.
it'll be a long conversation.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Dunbar. So we are running out of time, so what is the highlight we need to hit?
Here is a report for you from RDI on the project for reconciling service area boundaries. Now, the interesting thing about this report is it is limited to precinct area boundaries. The service area boundaries continue to be an issue. Liz is entirely tired of hearing about my vacuum cleaner. So there's a vacuum cleaner precinct that has the parks and fire district cut through it on some maps, and other maps it doesn't. And so anyway, we still need to reconcile some of those service areas, but we resolved all of the precinct area boundaries. I'm looking at my maps today. I have about 10 splits, if you want to call them splits. But there are 10 ballot styles that we are able to probably eliminate next year just because of the precinct area boundary fix. So if we continue with this project and get GIS to help us update the service area boundaries, we may even be able to eliminate another 10 ballot styles. The problem with the number of ballot styles, I have one ballot style, one voter. That is a big problem.
Wow.
Big problem. Everybody's going to know how that voter voted.
Yep.
So,
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Mr. Dunbar.
When we're going to redraw the assembly lines regardless of whether or not the ballot measure 12 passes because of the census, right? We're going to most likely redraw the lines because I think some will be malapportioned. When we do that, is there an opportunity to try to redraw some other lines and resolve this at the same time? Or do you think that?
I think so.
I do not know the answer to that, but maybe, I think the dilemma that you have, and this is the dilemma that Liz is discovering, remember these are tax districts, so those are owned by property appraisal, and then the service areas, sometimes, we want those to be the same.
Yeah.
But then the assembly districts may or may not be the same.
Yeah.
And then, but we can work on the assembly districts to make sure that you do not split a service area. I think
Sure.
that's a great idea. And also that you don't split a precinct. We only have one precinct that happens to, and the state did that
Sure.
because they didn't have a choice. It's precinct 520. So yes, we could work on that. I really appreciate that thought.
Well, my thinking on that, Madam Chair, is that, it's like ripping a Band-Aid off. If people have to change, so if there is an opportunity, like we need to merge or change some of these LRSAs or whatever the service area is, just working with whoever runs those to try to do it simultaneously so people are like, okay, things changed, as opposed to they're going to change this year, they're going to change next year, and now I'm confused. But if you change everything all at once, it's for a relatively limited number of people, then I think that's a better way to do it.
Well, but with the service areas, those are all voter approved. So you can't necessarily combine those and just, you can't.
But what could happen is where we have where most of them are in District 6. That's the biggest problem. Quite a few are up there in 2 where you are. And the biggest issue is the state precinct lines are splitting up in Crystal's area. They're splitting up Chugiak Fire and Anchorage Fire. That is, I think, where I've got my one voter. And that's why Dennis says in this that we really need to make sure that we have support on the redistricting committee and that we have municipal, we have to have our tax districts and parcels. We go by parcels, and we need them to go around our parcels. If they split a parcel in half, we found one the other day where we've got a road going in and the house is here, but the road is in the other precinct. It's just not fair to voters. And we need a presence on that redistricting board with our materials there so that this doesn't continue to happen.
Okay.
Well, and Madam Chair, I would venture to guess that there's not more than half a dozen or even less than that legislators that are aware of this situation. Obviously, some former assembly members who are now on in the legislature are probably aware of this, but it's a very small percentage, and this would be something that we might be able to work with the state on with our legislative program to make them aware, and maybe they'd be able to help us with some changes to save some voters the money, save the taxpayers some money.
Okay. Well, we're going to be having more conversations on this.
Definitely.
And especially once the Boundary Commission starts their meetings and the census is done and even more. Yeah. Okay.
I just thought of
Mr.
one
Pearson,
last
sure.
question before we go to the audience participation. You said that someone dropped out after the dropout date. Which candidate was that?
It was a candidate named David Walker.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
But it was too late, so his name's still going to be on the ballot?
Absolutely.
Oh,
And the code says that you can see on the calendar, the last date for candidates to withdraw is February 4th. And it says if a candidate withdraws by that date in the code, the clerk shall remove the name from the ballot. If the candidate withdraws after that date, it is in the sole discretion of the clerk. And I thank you very much for that code section. As Liz knows, there were a number of days before we finalized that ballot, but by February 19th, we had finalized the ballot.
Okay.
There was no way that we could take that name off the
and
ballot.
that's when the
February
person
19th.
was in it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Okay, all right.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. So, okay, well, I believe we are done with our order of business at this point, and anything that's left undone or unsaid will be at our next meeting. But we have we started really late because we didn't have a quorum, so we're going late. And
Before I begin, Jim, could I get a copy of the last item? Because you gave me another copy of the election outreach effort.
I did? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Thank you.
Really? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so audience participation. Mr. Haberman, do you have anything? Thank you.
Eugene Carl Haveman, Alaska resident for over 42 years, resident in Anchorage for approximately 20 years, and currently resident in Matsu Valley. For the record, when I started speaking, Senator Forrest Dunbar was not present for my part. He just left just technically for us to begin speaking. Number one, the Matsu Borough was mentioned to the election of you only got the principal part of the explanation of the turnout. In the Matsu Borough, there are basically 4 elections. One for Palmer, Wasilla, Houston, and the Matsu Borough Assembly Administration School Board. That election, the Assembly and School Board moved over to November. The result was normally we would have all those elections that people expect to have all those elections together. People were not informed, and there was a lower voter turnout. The end result that people think the election's over because they had that one in October and they're not thinking about this summer. And that's the scenario what goes on there for clarification. And then the other thing is, the key is, again, it's not like I've said it, and I think you know my words are going to be. You have this meeting, but where's the information prior so people know what's being said? There was a lot of substance information prior to this meeting. There's no question there. But the public has no clue to what was going on. Particularly, there's no legislative documents here to show what legislation was going to be discussed here and what was going to be handed out, if at all. And then, I'm going to say it's a long day, forgive me. Oh yeah, the principal concern I have is this. Now, it's very difficult for me as a member of the public to hear the way you set up in this room. There's noise in the back. I've called over not months, but years to refrain from having meetings in this room. I guess one of the reasons you had in this room to assist Barbara with respect is to, when she did her presentation, to notify certain equipment in the room, and it was easy to identify that versus not being physically present to see what all that equipment is. And I could understand that, but then the handicap, severe handicap has occurred where the public had difficulties. And when I did this, for those who are listening, to an audio tape, I put my hand over my ear to indicate difficulty hearing. Assemblymember Dunbar made did this and then smiled and made it a joking scenario without saying anything. The fact is, it was showing evidence it was difficult. It was a little better toward the end, and when Barbara was sitting to my left, it was a little better too, respectively, than standing there. But the key is to be able to hear each other respectively, and that's a problem. And I would caution you to have these meetings here. It's not really suitable for having a public meeting. And that's all I have to say, except for 2 seconds to spare.
Thank you, Mr. Haberman. All righty. Well, I think we've come to the end of our meeting, and so unless there's an objection,
I'll move to adjourn.
we'll adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you.